Morning. Hope that you all had a very nice Christmas with people that you love and that you care about. And if you didn't, I hope at least you tolerated them. Speaking of tolerating, my wife will tell you that I'm somewhat of a nerd if you guys don't know this. And what I mean by that is I really love to learn about all kinds of things. I'll just constantly see something that will catch my attention, that will strike me, and I just feel like I need to know everything I can about that, and I'll obsess about it. For the next day, 2 days, something like that, I'll just spend all my time learning about whatever it is. So that happened to me this week. I saw this tree, and it struck me. It was just such an odd tree. This is called a mangrove, and as you can see, they grow in the ocean or along rivers inside of the water. And that's not the only reason that these trees are odd. They also sprout from a seed that stays connected to the tree. So it's interesting because this seed almost has two life cycles. There's the part of the tree where it's growing on, or the part of the seed where it's growing on the tree and it's still connected to the tree. It's very much a part of the branch. And it's necessary that it undergoes this time of growth because it would not survive on its own apart from the branch. And while it's connected to the branch, it's being prepared for a kind of journey that it's going to go on. Because as you see in the picture next to it, eventually that seed is going to grow to a point where it falls off the tree and drops straight into the ocean or the river, and it gets carried by the current until it gets so weighed down by the water, so waterlogged, that it sinks to the bottom, plants itself in the sand in the shallow part of the ocean, and as you saw in the previous picture, it begins to grow into an entire tree. And as I was learning about this tree, I just was kind of struck about how similar it is in a lot of ways to our walk with Christ. Because here in this life, we are connected to Him. We are a part of Him. He is the vine, and we are the fruit of His vine. We are growing and being pruned, being cultivated for the life to come. We're being prepared for our ultimate destiny. Paul also says this in 2 Corinthians 5:17, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, and the new is here." I want to take this Sunday to kind of take some time and reflect on 2024 and think about in what ways, I want you to all to ask yourselves, in what ways have I been pruned? In what ways have I had something taken or cut out of me by the Lord? And in what ways has that been replaced by something positive? And as we're thinking about that, I want to think forward too in 2025, because the turning of a new year is a natural time when we can reflect on our spiritual walk with Christ and where we realize that we are becoming what we need to be for the future. I want to focus on these two verses today. Draw your attention to Galatians 5:22 and 23. "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law." I'm going to ask for your help today. This is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to have you guys interact with me. So I need you guys to pay close attention to this verse because I'm going to be asking you, what's the next fruit of the Spirit? So if you guys need to open up your Bibles to Galatians 5:22 and 23, go ahead and do that. If you need to look it up on your phone, go ahead and do that. But we're going to be camping out in these two verses today. So the first one is easy because we've got it up on the screen. What is the first fruit of the Spirit? Love. Oh, wow, you guys sound so enthusiastic. Love is the first fruit of the Spirit. What we're going to do today is we're going to look at each one of the fruits of the Spirit, and we're going to see how Jesus exemplifies this concept and also why you need it in your life. So, how does Jesus exemplify love? That was very hard for me to pick a certain story because he exemplifies love in almost everything he does. But what I decided was the story of the demoniac. You all know the story. Jesus crosses the river. He goes to the Gerasenes. And immediately as they get off of the boat, him and his disciples, they're confronted by this man. A crazy man. A man who lives in a graveyard. A man covered in chains. A man who howls like a wolf and cuts himself with stones. A man who is oppressed by so many demons that when he's asked, "What is your name?" his response is, "My name is Legion, for we are many." A man who represents the unlovable. The one who is shunned, the one who is forgotten, the one who is left for dead. But not to Jesus. Because to Christ, he is worthy of love, even when no one else can see it. So, you need love in your life because without it, you would be like the demoniac. You would be left alone. You would be forgotten. You would live in among the dead places. What's the next fruit of the Spirit? Joy. All right. I cannot think of a better example of joy than when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. Again, you know the story. He receives notice that his friend Lazarus is dying. But instead of going immediately to him, he waits 2 or 3 days. After which he returns to Bethany. And as he's coming to the town, he's greeted by Martha. Well, greeted may not be the right word because she comes to him and she says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. I know that you have the power to heal him, and you did not come. Why didn't you come? Why were you not here?" And Jesus responds to her and he says, "Martha, you will see your brother again." And she says, I know. She cuts him off. "I know, I'll see him again. I'll see him in the resurrection someday far in the future when God raises us up from the dead. I'll see him then." And Jesus says, "No, Martha, you're not hearing me. You will see him again today." He says, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die." Do you believe this? And so he raised Lazarus back to life. And the joy that Mary and Martha must have felt must have been incomprehensible. I'm sure that most of you know what loss feels like, to lose someone close to you. My mom and I actually received a call this morning that someone we know recently passed away. And it was a complete shock. He was only 35. So for him to be taken like that is a huge tragedy. And I can only imagine what it must feel like for his mother, for his father, to have lost someone so close at such a special time of the year. It's heartbreaking. And yet, with Christ, we can still have joy in the middle of loss, even among loss so great. Because with Christ, we have hope. Hope that we will see them again. So, you need joy, because without it, we will all be lost in a dark and dismal world. You need the joy of Christ, because he gives us hope that we can be reunited with those that we lost. All right, what's the next one? Peace. What better story than when Jesus calms the storm? Jesus is sleeping because he's absolutely exhausted from all the work that he had been doing. He's resting in the boat, and the waves are coming, and they're tossing and turning the entire boat. The storm is closing in. The disciples are terrified. They shake him awake, and they say, "Lord, don't you care that we're dying?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." And then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He then rebuked his disciples and said, "Who are you that have so little faith?" But his disciples said, "Who is this, that he has power over even the wind and the waves?" It's interesting. This must have struck home a little bit more even for the Jews, because in Genesis, when God creates the world, it says that he was hovering over the face of the deep. Well, the word that's used there is chaos. That it's this idea that the deep is this abyss, this endless expanse of water that's in such chaos it can't be tamed. There's nothing that can be done about it. And yet God speaks into the chaos, and his word brings order. His word brings peace. His word brings life. So when they see Jesus speak into the chaos of the storm around them, they recognize there is something special about him. They already knew that, but this went on an even deeper level. So, you need peace because it is the mark of the Holy Spirit within you. If you are given over to anxiety or to worry, you're not really living out the Spirit. Because he brings peace. He is the Prince of Peace. He is the one who speaks peace into the chaos. That's easier said than done, right? The disciples saw the wind and the waves, and they were afraid, and they were rebuked for it. So, do not be like them in this story. Do not fall into the trap of seeing the wind and waves and being so consumed with anxiety, with fear, that you forget what really matters. What's the next fruit of the Spirit? Patience. I think that Jesus is an absolute paragon of patience. All throughout his ministry, he is dealing with people who, like the Pharisees, are trying to twist his words and use them against him to try and catch him in a trap. He's dealing with people who he sees on a daily basis, that he lives with, that he sleeps next to, and at every turn, they misunderstand what he's trying to tell them. On a daily basis, he is dealing with people who don't even know the basics of what he's trying to teach them. And so he finds ways to express what he's trying to teach in a way that's understandable to each and every person. And he has the patience to kneel down in front of his disciples and wash their feet. Now, I don't know if you guys are aware, but feet washers in that day were the lowest of all servants. It was a position of shame, actually. Because as you're walking through the Judean countryside, the best hope that you have is that you only get a little bit of dust on your feet. But you're probably going to get manure, you're probably going to get thorns in your feet, you're probably going to bleed, you're probably going to get mud all over your feet. It's going to be disgusting. And the feet washers had the lowest position. But Jesus said, I'll take that position. I will be the one to wash your feet. Because he understood that true leadership comes from example and not by clawing your way to the top. So, why do you need patience? Well, because the world is full of people who do not understand why Jesus did this. The world is full of people who will lie, will steal, will cheat to get their way to the top because They believe that that's all that matters, that that's the end goal. But Christ shows us a different pattern. All right, what's the next one? What? Kindness. Okay. Kindness. I really struggled to find a story of Jesus being kind. Can you believe it? No. Kidding. I think that this one exemplifies it the best, though. Jesus is walking along the road with his disciples, and he's approached by a man who from a very far distance says, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." And he gets down on his hands and knees and he says, "If you are willing, you can do it. You can make me clean." Jesus could have cleansed him from a distance. Jesus could have cleansed him without even meeting the man. But instead, Jesus approaches him, puts his hand on him, and says, "I am willing. Be clean." Jesus understood that the leprosy is only the symptom. What this man really craved, what this man really needed, what this man was missing was contact, human contact. How long had it been that he had been put out of the synagogue? How long had it been that he shared Sabbath with his family? How long had it been that he ate a meal or held his kids or kissed his wife? And so Jesus, showing the ultimate act of compassion, of kindness, touched the man. It was not enough to simply heal him of his disease, of his infirmity. He reached out the hand and he touched him. So, you need kindness in your life because all of us at one time or another have either been the leper or have been the person who has pushed the leper out. Right? We all have either experienced what it means to be cut off, to be excluded, to be left out, or maybe we've done that to someone else. But if you are growing in the Spirit, if you are growing in the fruit of the Spirit, kindness will be your first response. You will extend the hand as Jesus did. All right, what's the next one? Goodness. I can't think of a better story than the Samaritan woman. Again, you all know the story. Jesus is going into Samaria. He stops at a well along the way. His disciples go into town. And then a woman approaches. And this is odd because the woman is approaching in the middle of the day, in the heat of the day, and she's coming alone, which was dangerous, which was unheard of. But it's just very strange. And this woman, coming alone, she's a Samaritan. She is everything that Jesus is supposed to be against. But what does Jesus do? He speaks to her, he teaches her, he even asks her, "Will you give me a drink?" He is willing to drink from the same vessel as she is. All of this is unheard of in his time. You see, the reason that she's coming to this well in the middle of the day when no one else is there is because she is not accustomed to goodness. She's not used to receiving goodness from other people, especially not people like Jesus. She's there to avoid people like Jesus. And here he is, extending the hand, extending the olive branch, even offering to share water with her, to teach her. He demonstrates something to her that she had lacked in her life for quite a long time. So, you need goodness in your life because it is good for you and it is good for your soul. I mentioned earlier that I'm somewhat of a nerd. I'm going to continue on in that vein. I really like Lord of the Rings. I don't know if all of you like Lord of the Rings or if you've even seen it. Maybe you haven't. But it is a story about good versus evil. and there's a certain part of the story where the evil is encroaching all around, on every side. People are dying everywhere. And the main character, Frodo, he drops to his knees, and he tells his friend, I can't do it anymore, Sam. I can't do this. And Sam, he gives a response that's worthy of a quote, but I'm not going to say it all here. But Frodo responds to him, what are we holding on to? And Sam reaches down and picks up his friend, puts him on his feet, looks him in the eye, and says that there is still some goodness in this world, Mr. Frodo, and that is worth fighting for. And I don't know that I could even say it any better than that. We hold on to goodness because it gives us a reason to keep going. It gives us a reason to keep fighting, as Paul says, to fight the good fight. Okay, what's the next fruit? What? Faithfulness. Okay. What better example than Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane? Jesus, in the midst of being betrayed, in the midst of his disciples not caring about what's going on, so much so that they're willing to sleep while he is pouring out his heart and soul in prayer, while he's sweating blood. He says, my Father, if it's possible, please take this cup from me. I don't want to do this. I do not want to go through with this. If there's any other way, if there is anything else that can be done, let it be done. Yet, not my will, but yours be done. He remained faithful even when it cost him everything, even in the middle of being betrayed. You need faithfulness in your life, because without it, you are like a wave in the wind being tossed to and fro, as James says in chapter 1, verse 6. Faithfulness keeps you grounded. Faithfulness is like the anchor that holds you steady when life inevitably comes in and tries to drag you away. What is the next one? Gentleness. I think that Jesus' interactions with children exemplifies gentleness to the utmost degree. He's teaching in the public places, and the children are trying to get to him. They want to talk to him. They want to see him. They want to ask him questions. They want to play with him. And his disciples are holding them back. You get the feeling that in this time and place, maybe children weren't liked very much, because they're seen as an annoyance. They're pushed away. They're kept back. And they say, no, keep them back. Keep them away. And Jesus says, stop. What are you doing? Let them come to me. Bring them here. In fact, if you want to inherit the kingdom of heaven, you must become like one of these. You need gentleness in your life. Because in all of your relationships and work, at home, even in the church family, we are going to rub each other the wrong way sometimes. We're going to step on each other's toes. We're going to say things that the other person doesn't like. We're inevitably going to upset some people. And it takes some gentleness, and some compassion, and some kindness to work through that and not create divisions. Paul says, do not let there be divisions. Do not let there be strife. Do not let there be envy. Do not let there be factions among you, for such things are not fitting for the church of God. You need gentleness in your life. What's the next one? Self-control. So Jesus' temptation in the wilderness, one of the best examples of self-control. He goes off, he's alone for 40 days. He doesn't eat the entire time. And he's tempted in 3 ways. Tempted with immediate gratification. He's tempted with a display of his power. And he's tempted with dominion, control over the entire world. A lot of people will say that, I don't think that was a very good temptation for Jesus. I mean, he already owned the world, right? I don't think so. I think that Satan knows what he's doing. I think that Satan knows exactly how to try and leverage temptation against even Jesus. I think that this was a real temptation for Jesus, and it was very hard to say no. Imagine getting to inherit everything that was already yours without having to go through the sacrifice. I'm sure that must have been difficult. Yet, his unwavering commitment to God's will highlights the importance of self-control. You need to grow in self-control. You need it in your life. Because in this world that we live in now, vice and addiction is in everything, in all kinds of forms, whether it be alcohol, tobacco, drugs, even social media or pornography. The numbers tell us that all of us are hooked on something, are stuck on something. We need to cultivate self-control. Okay, why am I doing all this? Why are we going through the 9 fruits of the Spirit? Why are we looking at Jesus' examples of the fruits of the Spirit? Why am I telling you that you need to have them? At some point during this lesson, my hope is that something called to you, that something stuck out to you, that one of these fruits made sense to you, that something clicked, and you said, you're right. I think I need a little more self-control. I think I need a little more kindness or gentleness in my life. If that's the case, don't ignore it. Do not ignore that calling, because that's the Spirit working in you. And He is telling you what it is you need to grow in over this next year. We can use the new year as an opportunity to cultivate and to grow and to develop these fruits further. My goal today is to try and put this in front of you and let the Spirit tell you exactly what it is that you need to be working on. My prayer is that all of us will become more and more like Christ, not just today, but tomorrow and the next day, on into infinity. Remember that, like the mangrove tree, this life, this body that we're in, this is just meant to prepare us for what's to come. And we are meant to prune and to cultivate and to grow and to develop these fruits of the Spirit. I want to close out with a prayer today. Lord, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity that we have to gather here, the opportunity that we have in this country to be able to gather as a body, as Christians, openly and sincerely, without fear of retribution, without fear of persecution. Lord, it's just such a blessing to be a part of such a beautiful family, and God, I pray that you have been able to speak through me today. I pray that all of us can strive towards one or even all of the fruits of the Spirit, to grow them in our lives, to become more and more like your Son. Lord, I thank you so much for who and what you are, and I pray all of this in your Son's name. As we move on into our last song, if anyone would like to begin their faith journey with God, with Christ, please come forward and we'll get you baptized today. Take your confession. Also, if anyone has any prayer requests, you can meet with Bob or one of the elders. I don't know if Bob's here today, but usually they meet in room 9, or one of the elders will be up here in front. All right, come forward as we stand and sing.